actress, producer, and host of Aim for the Stars, where you'll meet the stars of today and tomorrow. I'm an actress and model from the East Coast of the United States, and this show is brought to you by Jess TV and Jess FM Radio from Lethbridge, Alberta. I am pleased to introduce my next guest, Kerri Lane Mariano. Kerri is an award-winning writer, director, producer, and has featured film streaming on Netflix and Hulu. Hi, Kerri. I'm so happy that you could join me today.
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
I am wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, would you be able to tell the audience a little bit more about the process of getting a film on a major streaming network such as Netflix and Hulu?
Well, lots of times it's a lot of people that are working behind the scenes on that. So I'm a producer for those films. So normally I'm at the beginning of that production, of the pre-production, putting the stories together, gathering assets, gathering locations, crew, and then once we film, then we actually have a distribution company that will handle the actual getting it sold and getting it up on the different locations. So like you mentioned, we had my first film that went up to Netflix, the second one went to Hulu, and currently we have Miss Valentine streaming on Xumo.
Well, it's very interesting to hear the process behind that. I'm curious, when did you first get started in this industry?
Completely by accident. I love this kind of story. When you look back 20 years, you're like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And not once would it ever have been filmmaking. And the way it happened, I was working at Shenandoah University and I was taking classes. I was a photographer on the side. So I would work at the university during the day, evenings and weekends, I would run my photography studio. And while you're working there, you can take free classes. I'm like, oh, I'll pick up some classes. And so there was a film marketing class. I'm like, I could use that. Film, photography, it's very similar. So went to the film marketing class and there's 3 guys up front, which is unusual for a college class. And they said, we're not going to market a film, we're going to make a film. And of course, I was an adult learner in a class of teens and they were like, we need a mansion, we need a Ferrari, we need all of these things. And I'm like, got it. And they're like, who are you? And it was just because I was so connected in our area, I was able to provide all of those things for that company. They were from LA, so they didn't have a lot of resources here in the area. So it turned out to be a great partnership. I fell in love with filmmaking and I've been making films ever since.
Wow, that is awesome. I'm not a story that you hear very often.
So. No, it was very happenstance, but it was a blessing.
Wonderful. So between then and now, how do you think the industry has changed?
Wow. Well, we went through a lot, right? So when I started, we went through COVID, we went through a strike, we went through all of these different elements you have to kind of overcome or figure out how to still produce in those moments. So we were one of the first film production companies to make a movie during COVID. So that was very interesting. We had to rethink everything we did filming a movie, during a COVID shutdown. How do you do that? And we were able to make it work. It was very interesting, but we did it. So it's just those little things that, come along the way. You just have to go with the flow and figure out as you go sometimes.
Wow. Yeah. COVID was definitely a hard time for
yes, it was.
most actors and, people in the industry, producers, all of everybody, really.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned in your bio that you are passionate about producing romantic comedies. I'm curious what you like about that genre.
How can you come out of a romantic comedy and not feel good or not have a good hearty laugh in the middle of them? There's something for everybody. I don't think it matters what age you are. There's some kind of comedic relief in there of some type that will usually speak to a variety of people. And that's what I love. It's just, bringing a little lightheartedness to the holidays, especially because most everything I make is Christmas. And, Christmas can be a hard time for people. So having a fun, silly comedy that either, makes fun of yourselves a little bit or just a good holiday laugh. That's what I like. And of course, who doesn't like fake snow and reindeer and elves and all of the Christmas magic?
I completely agree. So, based on your expertise, what is your favorite rom-com, or which rom-com would you recommend?
Of mine or in general?
Of yours.
Oh, of mine, I would say my favorite one is the newest one, Miss Valentine. That was such a great shoot for locations. Now that one is Miss Valentine, but there's still Christmas elements in it. But that one had such just beautiful sets. We were able to partner with the Apple Blossom Festival. So we shot during a major festival here in Winchester, Virginia. So we were able to shoot during the parade. I was in the parade with a truck, and we had our actress up on the float waving, going through an actual parade and filming it at the same time. So it's just really unique. One, getting to capture my hometown of Winchester, Virginia in there, but then just the atmosphere of having all of these people at these festivals. And, we shot at a carnival one evening, and it just really made for beautiful scenery. We got to sneak in to the float warehouse one time and film like on the floats, right before one of the parades. So just really beautiful elements. It really just kind of like elevated that film.
Wow, that is incredible and sounds like a blast.
It really was.
So, okay, so that being said, what would be your favorite rom-com in general then?
Outside of that, I would say I really loved How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That one was just so cute. And Matthew McConaughey, I mean, you can't go wrong with anything he does. And Kate Hudson and him together, just beautiful.
Oh yeah, I watched that on Netflix right before we left, and that was a really good one.
It was. I love that one.
So, what would be your most memorable moment from any set that you've been on or worked on?
Oh gosh, there's like so many little pieces that like come together. I would say as a whole, I think it's meeting all of the actors and all of the crew on those, and like making those little moments. It might be like a little moment with Barry Bostwick, for instance. He was on Santa Girl with me, and he was so lovely to work with and so funny. He played Santa, and we just got along so well. We would give each other a hard time. And one time we were coming out of set, and we had a little like running joke between the two of us, and he came up behind me and like whispered the little running joke behind me, and I turned around and said something, kind of snappy, and my mom was there, and she's like, "Kerri Lane, you can't say that to that man." And I'm like, "Mom, like, no, it's a joke. It's a running joke between us." So like just building those relationships was beautiful. And then even after we filmed that, he and I stayed in touch, and right before Christmas one year, he sent me a text saying, "You're still on the naughty list." So like that was really beautiful. And then one time with the gentleman, Ryan Carnes from General Hospital, he was in the Miss Valentine movie, and just having a sit down, a beautiful lunch with him. And then afterwards, he did a little handwritten note to me after we finished filming. And I think it's all of those little pieces coming together that really like is what means the most and what I like.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you have positive film experiences.
Oh, you can have bad too. You can have bad too, but you got to focus on the good.
Of course. Which one of your films would you say that you're the most proud of?
Miss Valentine for the beauty of it, but the most proud of, I would truly say, was Santa Girl. That was my first film experience, and just getting to see how it worked, and like just being kind of like dumped into the pool of filmmaking. I would say that one is the one I'm most proud of, even though there was things in the film I didn't care for, but just the overall heart. That's where I fell in love with filmmaking, was Santa Girl. So I would say that's the one I'm most proud of.
Okay, so based on that question,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about what do you think people misunderstand most about being a producer? And can you kind of explain that or debunk the myth or whatever?
Well, I would say, when people say, what do you do? What is your role? And I think if you hear producer, I think sometimes they think that you're just kind of like sitting back and watching, where it is the complete polar opposite. For me, especially because it's a smaller film set, my producer role may look very different. I could be picking up the lead actors from Dallas Airport and driving them in. I could be getting them dinners, with a chef. I could be doing running lines with them. I did that with Richard Kind. He wanted somebody to run lines with him. It could be on set, herding all of the background extras, getting them to sign all of their paperwork. I mean, it really could be a lot. I'm also in pre-production. I'm in post-production. Just checking for errors and checking for things that we've missed. In pre-production, I'm checking script for errors or holes or things that don't quite line up. Or I might say, hey, to the writer, I've got this beautiful location. Can you work this into your script at all? So for me as a producer, mine may look very different than a typical producer that's on a big movie set, because usually they're very structured. I think where mine, kind of ebbs and flows a little bit with my movies.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
everybody in the film industry definitely has a big role, and people don't understand that sometimes. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
So, do you prefer one or the other, writing, directing, producing, or do you really just love the combination of all three?
I would say directing, I'm not as strong on directing. So I have written and directed my own films before. And so just because I've not done that a lot, I'm just not as strong or as confident in that area. Where if somebody says, hey, come help me produce a film, I'm like, I'm in. Like, I don't have any questions. But, I was a little more nervous directing my own film because that's a very different look and feel of, producing. When we're producing a film, I'm going to, be behind, way, way behind the camera, kind of watching things take place, and I can give feedback, but I'm not directly there behind the camera. But when you're directing, like, it's a whole different lens, literally, that you're looking through, and how you see the film. So for me, I think definitely producing is more my favorite out of all of them. But I do like the writing. So I'm a writer. I've always wrote for since I was like fourth grade. I was writing short stories, and I have written several scripts. I've got one right now called Gingerbread Games. It started as a script, and then I moved it to a feature book. And then now I'm working to get it back. I want to make it into a film now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so since you were a little bit more unfamiliar in that director role, was there anything unexpected that happened to you
Oh, as a director or as a producer?
as a director?
As a director, well, lots. So it was my first time directing my own film, and so with that, yeah, like I said, I was a little bit more uncertain of, am I doing it correctly? Am I not doing it correctly? And I always love to work with students. So I was working with an all student crew. So it was a little different having to not only direct, but then also to give like more directions to the cast and to the crew because they were students. But I love working with students. It's one of my like passion projects working with them. So I never complain about that side of it. It's just a little different, instead of having actors that are more established. I had a lot of green that they didn't know, like they wouldn't know what a one was or how to go from a one to a two, and in their placement. So just kind of guiding and directing at the same time made it a little bit more challenging.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So I'm curious. I know you love to have students in your projects.
Mhm.
Is that something that inspired you to create the Real Inks Art Foundation, or what was the inspiration behind that?
So that a little bit of working with students more because so when I make the films and I'm a contractor for this LA company, we only make one every 2 to 3 years. And I love filmmaking and I want to filmmake every single day. So in my brain, I'm like, okay, how can I make films every single day? How can I include students in these films? And how can I truly make this work for our area and just really help inspire others to love the filmmaking like I do? So that's kind of where Real Inks came about. I really wanted to make this nonprofit foundation where we could make stories that were really good, wholesome. We could, share something really funny and uplifting and positive. Or the one I'm working on currently is more of a community awareness of like, hey, this is something you should look out for. So we're going to make a documentary on online romance scams. So that's going to be my first documentary I've worked on. So that's really exciting. But I also have like, that feature of gingerbread games in the background I want to make.
Wow, that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So how how do you know when you write a script if the story is worthy of a film?
So, sometimes I don't think you do know. I think sometimes it also takes somebody, a second person, a second opinion to actually give you honestly, really good feedback and say, you know what, this has got some substance to it, but let's tweak this. Or I think you've got a great thing here, but let's do this and this. And I did that exact thing. So when I wrote Gingerbread Games, I handed it off to several people that I respect. I'm like, hey, what do you guys think? Like, what am I missing? What does it need? Where can I beef it up? Where should I shorten it down? And that was really helpful. And then I also submitted it. You could do these contests online, or you can pay someone to give you feedback. And that really was a nice deep dive into my script where they really tore it apart, but in a good way, where they would look at it and say, you need to pick up your pace in this scene. You could add a little bit more here. You could trim a little bit more here. So having that really deep dive on top of my friends giving me feedback to me was really helpful. So now I know I have this really solid script that I could sell or I could now turn and make it into a feature.
Wow. Okay, so do you think getting collaboration or feedback is really important for someone who is just getting into this industry, no matter if it's, writing, producing, directing, acting?
It's critical. I mean, in everything you do. So even when I'm producing, I want feedback. And so even when we're getting to do this new documentary, the producer I'm hiring to join me, I told him, I'm like, I really want your feedback. Tell me if I'm doing something right. Tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And that's the way everybody learns. If you don't have that, you're never really going to truly learn. And I would rather someone much, tell me at the beginning, say, hey, Kerri, hey, you're going down the wrong path, or you need to like think about it this way. So I love working like that. I love that open communication and dialogue because that way I grow and I learn as I'm, going through this industry.
Absolutely. That is a great skill to have.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to reintroduce ourselves for
Okay.
everybody just tuning in. My name is Arianna. I am the host and producer of Aim for the Stars, and we are coming to you live on Just TV. And my guest is Kerri Lane. Kerri is an award-winning writer, director, and producer, and has featured films on Netflix and Hulu. So, getting back into the questions, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about how you find inspiration for these stories and the characters and the settings and all of the different aspects. What inspires you?
Absolutely. So the films that are currently on the Netflix and Hulu, those were written by Patricia Harrington. So what's beautiful when you get someone else's script, you have the written words, but then it's my job to kind of like help bring these to life. So when I'm getting someone else's, I kind of read through them and I'm trying to visualize like, what is she saying? What is she thinking? What does this location look like? What is this character going to look like? And then I go out and find those beautiful locations and kind of like I always say, put the air into the story, put the breath into the story. So I love that side of it. When I'm writing my own, I do use my friends and family quite a bit. So, like, if you read Gingerbread Games, I have all of my family in there. So, like, the good and the bad. So, like, sometimes I make fun of my sister in there a little bit. So, she always wears like a cardigan. So, I did have to like put that into the story because you got to make fun of your sister in the movies and your book. So, I did when I'm writing for myself, I do use a lot of inspiration from my local area. I'm so proud of Winchester. And then, of course, friends and family, you're going to definitely end up in my stories. And I have started to write a thriller. So, of course, I have a few people, along the way that you meet that you're not quite fond of. So, of course, they're going to be my version of my evil, person that I put into my thrillers. So,
That's amazing and so wholesome. I'm glad that you can include the people that you love in these projects.
yes, it does make it fun.
What motivates you to keep creating these projects?
Oh my gosh. Sometimes I wish my brain would shut off, but I guess it's a blessing that it doesn't. I mean, I have folders and folders inside my Google Drive of just all kinds of story ideas. I could be driving down the road and a story idea will hit me and I use my microphone and I start recording it in there, or I wake up from a dream at night and then I'll have a story in that. And so I have like stories everywhere. I have notebooks of stories and pages of stories. And then it's just coming back to them and really like sitting down with that start and seeing like, would this go somewhere? Would it not go somewhere? And then really just kind of seeing if you could put together a feature, put together a short film from those.
Oh wow. So it seems like you have a very creative brain. Is that the hardest part of the journey, is actually sitting down and trying to enhance your thoughts and create a bigger story out of the original thought?
I think the time management of it all is really a challenge for me. So, I do have all of these stories, they're just kind of like lingering here in the background of my brain or on paper on these, Google Docs. And it's really carving out that time to sit down and again, put life and breath into those stories and really kind of carry them forward. So, one day when I do retire, like that would be my goal, is to actually like really start to work on these stories a little bit more.
Wow. That's really interesting to know. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing.
Absolutely.
So, while you were a director or a producer or any moment that you were on set, have
Mhm.
you ever had a major problem during filming, and how did you handle that?
Always. There's always a fire on set, not a literal fire. There's always challenge. I like to call them challenges. And, I think that's kind of the thing I love about filmmaking. It's putting the puzzle pieces together, right? You get that script and you have to put all of those little pieces together, location, cast, crew, assets, diamonds, Ferraris, mansions. You get it all together, but then something's always going to change midway. So locations is always one of my babies I do. So, I find these locations, the crew is in LA, you send them photos, you send them videos. And then when they get to Virginia and we're filming, and then they were like, do you have plan B? Do you have something second? And so we were in the middle of filming, I think it was Miss Valentine. We had a big restaurant scene that we were filming that day. We were up in an airport filming, and in the airport, the executive director was like, what's another restaurant we could film in? I'm like, tonight? And he was like, yeah, tonight. I'm like, well, let me see what I can find. And so I literally was in the airport calling my other people that I knew in Winchester that owned a restaurant that could let us come in with like a crew of 50 to 60 people, because we had to fill the restaurant with people and extras. And I found one, and we left the airport, drove down to the restaurant, and finished filming that evening down there.
Wow, that is a big task. It's incredible that you were able to get that done.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So what would you say has been the most rewarding part of your journey so far?
You know what? It's seeing that thing that was just words on paper, seeing it on the big screen, watching it in a theater full of people that you love and and seeing like all of the faces on the screen. You're like, oh, look, there's my son, there's my mom, there's my neighbor, there's so-and-so, there's the restaurant owner that I know that, let us film here, or here's that location at the George Washington Hotel. And seeing all of that on screen, knowing that we did that, like we put all of that together. And, it's not one person, it's, lots and lots of people coming together to really bring it to life. I think that's the most rewarding part, is seeing it on the big screen once we're done. And then you can be like, woo, done.
Okay, so with that being said, what type of stories are you hoping that you're going to be able to tell in the future?
Definitely gingerbread games. That is the one, like, is my heart. That one's my baby right now. Like, I want to produce that one. I want that one made. I want it on Hallmark, Netflix, wherever it could go, like as soon as possible. Like, I want to start production on that, like this Christmas, and like have that one going. So if anybody watches and wants to make a really cute rom-com, it's got food fights, it's got romance, it's got all of those little beautiful elements of the perfect rom-com. So that one's the one I really want to see go and be the next big project.
That's amazing. It sounds like a great story, and I'm sure everybody is dying to see it.
It's a cute one.
Oh, of course. So what would you say would be one piece of advice that you would give to yourself when you were first starting out in this industry?
Just go for it. Do it. Try. I always, my saying was always open doors of opportunity, because you never know if you don't open that door. When I took that film class, if they would have said, we're going to make a film, I could have easily been like, not for me. And I'm so glad, like, I stuck with it and I did it. I learned something new, even though it's something completely out of my wheelhouse. I had no idea what it was. I fell in love with it. So I think just being able to learn something new, take those chances of opportunity, open those doors, and just really go for it and just put everything you have into it. I think that's the best.
Absolutely. And no is, it's the worst thing somebody can say to you.
Right? And they can't say no if you don't ask. That's always kind of my saying as well, is you have to ask to get the yes or to get the no. I think we froze, Miss Arianna. Well, I'll chat until she comes back. So if you can still hear me, I hope you do, like, log on, check out Miss Valentine. It is on Hulu. And then Cupid for Christmas. Oh no, I said it wrong. Miss Valentine is on Xumo. And then Miss Valentine's on Xumo. Mount Hideaway is another one I did. That one was on Amazon. Cupid for Christmas is on Hulu. And then Santa Girl was on Netflix, but I think it's now been moved to Amazon, I believe, or YouTube. So movies do stay on like platforms for a little bit, and then they do transition over to a different platform. It's just kind of part of the contracting. So do definitely check those out and make sure you watch one of those. They are actually a lot of fun. All right, while we're still waiting, I will tell you a little bit about Reeling Arts. So that one is a nonprofit, and that one I started in 2025. And not only we're going to make like films and stuff for our nonprofit, we're going to do some workshops, and those are for the community, and they're going to be on script writing, book writing, voiceover, photography, videography, children's literature, music, and art.
Alright, guys. Well, I am so sorry that we did not get to close off that. And oh, hello. I know. I thought it was me. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Absolutely. I think absolutely. So this is a life lesson for everyone. Of course. And thank you to our viewers for watching Aim for the Stars. Be sure to catch our other episodes on Just TV, YouTube, and Roku.